All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here and joining us in another workshop in our virtual career series, our IET virtual career series. Today, our workshop is titled From Nova to the Office, Using Your Experience to Land a Job. And this is presented in partnership with Arfa Saeed, which I will let her introduce herself in just a moment. But before we jump into today's session, I want to go through just a few housekeeping things. So just remember throughout the session, if you could please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted. That really helps with the session going smoothly. If you need, excuse me, if you need ASL interpreting, that is available, and we have Brenton and Kenya on here who are graciously providing interpreting services for us today. So you can pin your video so that you can always see them throughout the session. We also have captioning services available, and if you need closed captioning, you can click the closed captioning icon in your Zoom menu, and the captioning will pop up at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time for question and answer at the end of this session, but if at any time you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the session. All right, so let me introduce myself. I know several of you have been to other sessions that I've done, or either I've done with some of my colleagues, but for those of you, if it's your first time, my name is Brittany Hollis and I work at Nova in the Information and Engineering Technologies division as the career coach. When we are not in COVID, and I would be on the Woodbridge campus. I used to be on Annandale, but now we've moved to the Woodbridge campus, so you can find me there in the workforce development building. And today we also have on our session Arfa Saeed. If you want to introduce yourself, Arfa, go ahead.
Absolutely happy to be here. My name is Arfa Saeed and I am a proud Nova graduate as well. Not going to date myself by telling you how long ago I graduated, but I had the pleasure of taking classes in Annandale and at the Loudoun campus. And since I've graduated and got my bachelor's in science, I actually got a job in the government. So I do full-time consulting work for NASA through a small business. And I actually started the internship program at my company where we actively recruit Nova graduates and other local area graduates for roles in cybersecurity, data analytics, machine learning, information assurance, and cloud security, which is what my firm specializes in. A lot of the experience that I hope to speak to today or answer questions on is about, the consulting for the federal government, what recruitment looks like, any sort of project management type of questions that people have around that, and of course, cybersecurity, which is one of the main programs that Nova offers. So I'm excited to be here, and if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect. Thanks, Brittany.
Of course. Thank you for being here, Arfa. And Arfa, I'm going to ask you if you could monitor. We still have, looks like, some folks in the waiting room. Can you just let them in? I've given you co-host permission, so.
Sure, absolutely. I will do that.
Thank you. All right, so jumping right in, today, what we're going to talk about, kind of the goals of this session are to define transferable skills and show how they can be beneficial for landing a job, and provide some practical strategies for identifying and communicating your skills. And we're going to use real world examples to demonstrate how you would communicate your skills and experiences in a variety of settings. And so the workshop today is going to kind of follow that flow of objectives. So before we kind of get into the content, I like to get people thinking, get some brainstorming going, because I think thinking about your experience as we talk about the different strategies is going to help you throughout the session, but also after, so that you can apply some of these things that we discussed today. So before we jump into the content, I want you to think about areas that you've gained experience. And this can be in the classroom, it can be volunteer organizations, professional organizations, internships, clubs. It can be if you had a part-time job or a full-time job. really anywhere that you might have gained experience. And one thing that I want us to keep in mind as we talk today is that all experience is experience. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I haven't worked like a real job. I haven't worked my 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are. And so they think that their experience doesn't apply, but that's not true. You gain experience in so many different ways throughout your life and throughout your journey. So think about some of the areas that you've gained experience and what are some skills that you got during those experiences. I want you to keep that in mind as we continue our conversation for today. So the reason that I say keep that in mind is because I think it's really important. I see students coming into it, well, when we used to be able to go into the office, I see students emailing me now asking, I don't know how to format my resume because I've never had a job before, or I'm switching careers and I don't know how to make the experience that I had in one job apply to the job that I'm trying to enter. And I always tell students to focus on transferable skills. Transferable skills are skills that are portable from one job to the next. So you can use them in a variety of professional settings. You gain them in different settings as well. And they're really important because if you are going up for the same job as say, another person who just graduated from Nova, y'all have the same background in terms of education. Neither of you have ever worked a full-time job in your life. All you have is your Nova experience. Your transferable skills are going to set you apart from that candidate that has the same employment and educational background as you. And so it's really important to be able to articulate or communicate your transferable skills on your resume and in your interviews. And there are tons of transferable skills out there. But I looked on Indeed. Indeed is a website that I'm on very often because they have, not only is it a job board, but they also have a really great blog component of their job board. And they have a lot of great information that I think is really, really helpful. And Indeed outlined the top 10 transferable skills, which are decision-making, multitasking, creative problem solving, collaboration, communication, professionalism, integrity, management, initiative, and empathy. Now, some of these we hear all the time. Like, we know that we need to be a critical thinker and a problem solver and be able to make decisions. But some of these, they don't come up as often, or maybe we don't think about them, like integrity or empathy. We know that those things are good character traits to have to be a good human, but we don't think about those in terms of, oh, this is something that I can communicate on my resume or in an interview, and how do I go about doing that? So transferable skills, I say that to say that there's a wide variety, and it can pretty much be anything. Now, obviously you don't want things to just be like way out in left field, but it really is, it's a good thing to use when you're trying to set yourself apart from one candidate to the next. So with that in mind, let's talk about how do transferable skills work. Oh, I don't know why that keeps happening. How do transferable skills work and how to find yours. So it really helps to think about your transferable skills in terms of categories. And so here are some that I just listed, and I kind of grouped them together in terms of categories that they might fall under. So like leadership and management, that could be anything from like initiating new ideas or managing groups. So as you look at these different categories and this different list of transferable skills, if you see any skills on here that either you've thought about and you have thought about using on your resume and you don't know how, or maybe there are skills that you have and you haven't thought about including them on your resume because you didn't know you could, I want you to type those in the chat. So we'll take a quick pause to type in the chat any skills that you might see on here that you didn't know, that maybe these were skills that you could list on your resume, but now that you know, you want to go back and include them. We have folks typing in the chat. So we have listening, initiating ideas, forecasting and predicting. Nadia says, didn't know this could be added. Yeah, that fits into a lot of things like project management, data analysis, all of that kind of stuff, planning. Managing groups, motivating others, facilitating group discussions. Yep, all of those can be applied. And so as you're thinking about some of these skills that you see on the screen that you're like, whoa, I didn't know that I could use any of these, as I'm talking about my experience, I think the thing to keep in mind is like, yes, we might have all of these skills and we might have all these experiences, and it is tempting to list everything that we have ever done in our lifetime on our resume, because we want employers to know that we're qualified. But you have to be selective in how you use these and which skills you choose to highlight. And it can be sometimes tricky to understand which ones are appropriate for different job postings that you're going after. And so one way that you can determine which transferable skills matter and what you should be including is looking at job postings. So one thing that I do if I'm looking for employment is I think about first of all, what field do I want to be in, but also what kind of jobs in that field am I interested in? And with that in mind, I start looking for job postings, and I might find 2, 3, 4, 5, however many that you want, job postings for positions that interest me. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to apply for these jobs, but these are just positions that I find interesting. And if I wanted to, I could apply. And once I have those positions, I start looking for keywords and key phrases in those job postings. And if you look for keywords and key phrases, and what I mean by that is what words and phrases keep coming up over and over again across these different postings. Once you find those keywords and key phrases, that gives you an idea of exactly what employers are looking for. And once you have that, then you can say, okay, well, I know what employers are looking for. Let me see how the skills that I've gained in my internships or my classes or a full-time or part-time job line up with these keywords or key phrases that I know employers are going to be looking for. And that will give you an idea of what you should be including on your resume or speaking about in an interview, and what might be better to be left off for a different job posting. Okay. Hold on, let me close my chat menu. Okay, so how do you communicate your transferable skills on your resume? So again, the key to winning with transferable skills is finding a way to articulate them on your resume and during interviews in a way that is unique and specific to you. Sorry. So the first thing is to get an idea again of what employers are looking for. So know what skills are required for the job, but also you need to know yourself and what you bring to the table. We don't want to just list skills for the sake of listing skills. You want to have a clear idea of what skills you have and if they are even relevant to the job that you are going after. Be clear on your goals. Be clear on what you're trying to get out of applying for this job. What is your end goal? Consider where on your resume you want to highlight the skills. So there are many sections of a resume, and there's no right way or wrong way. Like, you can format your resume in many different ways, and I've seen resumes look all kinds of ways. You can put your skills in your career summary section. You can put it in your key skills section. You can talk about your skills in your work experience section. It's really up to you where you choose to highlight, or you can highlight it in all three. And then you really want to speak the employer's language. So you want to use keywords and key phrases when it is appropriate to do so. So again, that goes back to pulling out those job postings and looking to see what phrases keep coming up over and over again, and how can I incorporate that into my resume. And so I think it's really helpful to see this kind of in practice and what this would look like if you were doing this, if you were trying to communicate your transferable skills on your resume. So let's look at this particular example. So this is just a made up person, but this can certainly apply. So this person, her name is Nicole, and she is a recent Nova grad looking for positions as a web developer. She doesn't have any employment experience, so she's never worked a job before, a full-time job before, but she's completed several class projects throughout her time at Nova. And she's most proud of her role in creating a contact form for a web application. So if I were sitting down with Nicole, if Nicole came to me and said, you know, I'm having trouble writing my resume or communicating my skills because I don't have any experience, this is what I would tell her. I would say the first thing that she needs to do is think about her skills more broadly. So what skills did you use in these class projects and how did you use them? And so it might be helpful to pick one class project that you want to focus on, as opposed to trying to think of all of the class projects that you've ever done at Nova, because I think that it can get in the weeds that way. And so once Nicole picks her class project, then we would go from there. For this particular example, let's say that Nicole worked on a class project for her web development class where she had to build a contact form for a web application, and she worked in a group or a team of 4 people. And each person in the group was responsible for a different part of the project. So somebody was responsible for the user interface and what is it going to look like. Then another person was responsible for the user experience and what is that going to look like as somebody moves throughout the contact form, and how is it going to be accessible. And then somebody was responsible for the actual code of the contact form, so on and so forth. Excuse me. And so now that we know, okay, these are the parts of the project, let's think about what was my role in that, what skills did I use and how did I use them? And so again, it helps to think of your skills more broadly. So maybe you motivated your classmates, or maybe you helped the group create goals and set deadlines or establish priorities for the project. Or maybe you set up the communication, you kept an open line of communication so everybody was on the same page and everybody knew what was needing to get done. And then you also actually did the actual coding of the project on top of that. So if you look down here at the bottom, I don't know if you all can, no, you can't see my mouse. Well, anyway, if you look down here at the bottom of this chart, that's what I just said. These are the things that I just said. So she motivated others by checking in. She delegated responsibilities. She established deadlines. She collaborated by creating a Slack channel, and she sent out weekly project update emails. So this is what she did literally in that project. And now if you start thinking about, okay, if I'm thinking about big scale categories, where do these skills fit in? So motivating others falls under leadership. Delegating responsibility is also a quality of leadership. Establishing deadlines and priorities is a characteristic of being organized. Creating a Slack channel, well, that's a way to communicate, and sending out weekly emails is also a way to communicate. So again, she's outlining what skills she used and how she used them. The next thing that I would tell Nicole to do is, after she knows what skills she used and how she used them, is to think about why she used these particular skills and the impact that they had. So why did you do it? And what was the result? What was the outcome? At this point, it would also be good for her to think about, if I was in a real job setting, how would I use these skills in a real job setting as well? Now, I didn't pull out everything from that last chart that we saw. I just picked communication to save time. So if she's thinking about her communication skills, okay, she sent out weekly project update emails. Well, what impact did that have on the group? Well, because she was sending out these detailed emails that were concise, and they outlined everything that everybody needed to do. They outlined how close we were to meeting our goals and our deadline. That really motivated people. And because of that, we were able to make progress and finish our project 24 hours before we needed to. So it cut down on time needed to complete the project. if she was thinking about, okay, I communicated using a Slack channel and shared Google Drive, how would I use that if I was in a real job setting? Well, she could use that to collaborate with her coworkers and provide feedback on design. So, the design cycle, she could go through that. They submit a design, they get feedback back. So she's thinking about why she used the skills and what impact did those skills have. I'm going to take a sip of water before we go into this next part. Okay. And then the last part of this is just putting it all together. And then this step, you are really refining, you're clarifying, and you're trying to make your communication as concise as possible. I cannot stress enough that on a resume, you want to be to the point, short and to the point, because recruiters are looking at resumes very, very quickly, and they have their mind set on what they're looking for before they even look at any single resume. So you want to make your point quickly so that they can find what they're looking for and move on. Same thing with an interview. People can get lost in just rambling. So you want to make your point as quickly as you can and move on. So a way to do that is to think about where you want to communicate the skills that you outline. If you want to do it on your resume, well, like I said earlier, there are so many sections that you can do that. You can do that in your career summary. You can list your key skills. You can include it in your work experience section. Each of these sections is going to look different on how you communicate your skills. So in this particular example, Nicole wants to communicate her communication skills in her work experience section. Now, if you notice, I changed the name of this section from work experience to selected achievements. And the reason that I did that is because, well, technically, Nicole doesn't have any work experience. She's never worked a full-time job, but she does have experience. And so we want the recruiter or hiring manager, or whoever's looking at this to know that she does have some sort of experience, and she has things that she's accomplished and that she's proud of. So if she's communicating her communication skills in her selected achievements portion of her resume, this is what it might look like. So obviously these are things that are standard. You're going to put the name of the project, the course that you completed it in, the actual name of the course, not like the number. You don't want to put ITN 257. I know that's AWS class, but for the purposes of this, you want to put the actual name of the class. You want to put the college or university that you completed the class at, as well as the dates. Month and year is perfectly fine, and then the location. Now, this first sentence is just a very quick snapshot of what the project is. It says this task with creating a contact form for a web application in a team of 4. So this is what we were asked to do. The contact form needed to be accessible and rendered from multiple screen sizes and browsers. And these were the guidelines. Quick, so the whoever's reading this, they know exactly what they are looking for. They know exactly what you were asked to do. And then the next thing is she includes a title. So just like if you were listing a job that you had, you would list your job title here. Well, in this project, she was the developer, so that's what she put. And then this first sentence is kind of just a broad brushstroke of what she did and the skills that she gained. So I gained broad experience using HTML and CSS code to create intuitively designed contact form. Now, after that, Nicole can start breaking down some things that she is proud of. So bullet 1 is really about highlighting, the first bullet is really about highlighting something that you're really proud of. So based off of everything that we did in steps 1 and 2, we already know what we want to talk about. We know that we want to communicate to the recruiter that we improved communication that cut down on the time that it took to complete the project. So she did that by saying, I slashed project completion time by 24 hours. I established avenues of effective communication between group members by designing weekly project update emails. Email communication streamlined project task completion, maintained efficiency, and provided project progress updates. So this tells exactly what the problem or the situation was. It tells what action she took, and it tells the result that it got her. And anytime you're trying to write these things, I call them achievement statements, or things that you're proud of that you want to highlight on your resume, that's a good way to think about it. X plus Y equals Z. My X is my problem, my Y is my action, my Z is my result. Anytime you use that formula, you're always going to be able to communicate what it is that you want to say, because you're thinking about it in terms of problem, action, result. So another example of what that might look like, this is a different person. So this is Brian, and he is a career switcher. So Brian is a longtime nurse. He's been in the healthcare field for 10 years, and he is trying to switch into cloud computing. Now, before we even get into this example, let me say, I've never worked a job in cloud computing, so if some of this information does not make sense, just go with it and pretend that it does. So he has no prior cloud computing experience, but has a large variety of healthcare experience. Brian is most proud of working with an IT team to implement software to manage patient care records. So same thing, the way that we approach the situation with Nicole, we would do the same thing with Brian. Firstly, thinking about what skills did Brian use and how did he use them? So his skills are data management, and he created models for new device adoption and new software workflows. Going on to step 2, why did you use the skills and what impact did those skills have? So again, he created models for new device adoption and new software workflows. And he did this because he wanted to help out his other employees in learning how to use the software, and also reduce the amount of misplaced patient records that was happening. So they were losing a lot of people's information, which is never good for a hospital or a care facility. And he wanted to reduce that. And because of these models that he created, he reduced that mismanagement of documents by 20%. Excuse me. So the next step, again, is putting it all together. We're going back to clarifying and refining and thinking about where you want to communicate your skills. So for Brian, in this case, he wants to communicate his skills in his career summary and in his key skills section. And if any of these resume sections that I'm talking about that you want to learn a little bit more on, I'll include a link in the email after this, so you can go back and watch the resume building workshop so you can get a better idea of kind of the layout and flow of this resume. So for Brian, like I said, he's going to include this in his career summary section. Excuse me, I'm not sure why I'm coughing so much. So in his career summary section, the first bullet point is going to be a statement that just introduces him. It tells about him, who he is professionally. And then after that, he's going to kind of start building and expounding on his skills. So he says he's an energetic professional with 10 years of experience promoting customer advocacy, embracing advanced technologies, and managing teams in the healthcare field. So that tells that, yes, I'm not in cloud, but I do have some work experience in healthcare. Then next, he's going to launch into talking about his data management skills. So again, what is he trying to communicate? He's trying to communicate that he created models that cut down on the mismanagement of patient records by 20%. So he says, I drove a 20% decrease in patient care mismanagement by creating new models to guide the adoption of new device use and new software workflows. So again, it goes back to that X, Y, Z. What is the problem? What the problem was, we kept messing up with the documents. We kept misplacing patient records. What was the action that I took? I created new models. And what was the result? It dropped that patient it dropped the mismanagement of patient care documents by 20%. If he wanted to include this in his key skills section, you can do this in a number of different ways. I suggest that you just create bullet points, and you can do them in broken up into columns like this. So if you notice, he has his customer service, employee development, all the things that kind of naturally fit together, logistics management, data management, and then he moves into more of the IT skills like Linux, Windows, Active Directory, Java, Microsoft Office, AWS. So the next place that you might want to communicate your transferable skills is in an interview. And so it's always helpful anytime you're going into any interview, whether that be a phone screen or a virtual interview or an in-person interview when those are allowed to happen again, it's always helpful to create a plan for yourself. And what I mean by that is finding your key points and figuring out how you're going to tell a story. So identifying 3 to 5 key points that you want to make in an interview, and thinking about what it is that you really want the hiring manager to remember about you. So if they don't know anything else about you, what are those 3 to 5 things that you want them to know before the interview is over? And so the way that you do that to find your key points is to identify 3 to 5 relevant experiences that you've had. Remember, when I say relevant, I'm not meaning that it's necessarily occurred or you had these experiences in the field that you're trying to enter or that you're currently in. Relevant experiences means that it allowed you to develop the skills that are necessary for the job that you are applying for. So just because your experience came from healthcare, but you're trying to get into IT, that does not mean that your experience is not relevant. It's just, are your skills relevant to the job that you're going after? So once you've identified those 3 to 5 experiences that you want to talk about in your interview, from those experiences, pinpoint the relevant skills that you've gained. Again, skills that are going to be relevant to the job that you're going after. And then think about, what did you achieve? So what results did you get? And can you quantify these results in any way and show the significance of your impact? So if you think about relevant experiences plus relevant skills plus relevant accomplishments, and this is the same thing as the X plus Y plus Z. It's the same concept. And then you want to think about telling a story. Okay, when you're answering interview questions, how can I paint a picture so the employer knows exactly what my experience was, what skills I got, and why it matters? So when I think of a story, I always think of the who, what, why, and how. But a framework that is often taught when people are preparing for interviews is the STAR method. And if you look over here, this is what the STAR method is. It's situations, task, action, result, and reflection. So the situation is describing the situation or the setting, what was going on. The task is indicating what needed to be accomplished. So what was I asked to do? The action is detailing the actions that you took and the skills that you utilize. What did I do specifically and how did I do it? The result is describing the outcome. What happened? What were the benefits? What impact did I make? And then reflection. It's always good to reflect anytime you complete a task. And sometimes in interviews, they might ask you questions like, well, what could you have done differently? And this is where that reflection piece comes in. Or they might say, think about a time when blah, 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 blah. And this is where that reflection piece comes in. So they're essentially asking you is, how can it be better? Okay, so at this point, Arfa, if you want to jump in and you have more experience directly related to recruiting and interviewing folks for IT positions. And so if you want to jump in and share some of your experience with communicating your skills in these different settings, feel free to go ahead and do so.
Sure, I can do that. I did want to say, Brittany, while you were talking about, I guess, this use case with Brian, you got a question. So is it proper in resumes to list course names? That really helps since I've never worked on any project outside of the class. So I guess someone had a follow up on the course names being in the resume.
Yes, very quickly. Yes, it is proper because if you don't have any like full-time employment or part-time employment experience, all you really have to pull from is your classes. And people want to know, okay, you're not just making this stuff up. What classes did these projects actually occur in? So quick answer.
Yep. And the second question you got is that, will you be putting this session on YouTube? Someone wanted a copy of the slides.
Yes. So I will talk about where all the information will be shared at the end.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think even going back to this question, I can tell you from my personal experience recruiting students from NOVA, we were looking to recruit a position, a part-time role at NASA, and we needed someone with Python experience. And even though this person got their degree, they never had a job in the IT field. But what she did do is add to her resume what her specific programming experience was and what the course she took in Python had her do in terms of project milestones and sort of what she used the programming language to, what was her final like work product in that class. And that's sort of what set her apart when it came to recruitment. I will say, just from a general standpoint of looking at so many resumes and recruiting so many university students, a lot of times what happens is that you can't get out of your own head. So you know all of the things that you've done, but the way you communicate that on paper is not anything that someone reading the resume can understand. So I really liked your point, Brittany, about how you mentioned that Amazon course. You know the course name, you know what number that course is, but somebody that's in the workforce, they're not going to know that. And a lot of times I see students get into this mental space where they're just putting stuff the way that the environment that you're in on a university campus, like everybody tends to know those course names. Everybody tends to know the professors. They know this information, but somebody that's reading your resume assume they don't know that. So I really liked your example about listing out that course. Another thing that I will say is transferable skills. That's something I have a lot of experience in recruiting for our company with, because that's typically what we look for. I will say NOVA tends to have the best and the brightest students when it comes to information and engineering technologies, basically your program, Brittany. And we know that. And when it comes to us looking at student resumes, we know we're recruiting from the university level. So what does this candidate bring to the table, which shows us that we would be willing to hire them and, throw them in front of a client? And again, it goes back to those transferable skills where you have good communication skills. We do a lot of client and consulting work. Can we put you in front of a client? Everybody, at the end of the day, most people can go through the cycles of getting a degree, but what do you bring to the table other than checking off that box, right? Those are the types of things that we're looking for. And there's ways to make that clear in your resume, specifically work that you've done outside, initiative that you took when you didn't have to. When you write your resume, do you just write something that you know of, or do you write about something that you accomplished, right? Like going back to that STAR framework, what was the result of your work, right? Because a lot of resumes will put a situation and say, I redid the company's website. But what does that mean? What did your redesign do for the company at the end of the day, right? Those are the types of things that it shows your character when we're looking at resumes. Is, are you a results-driven person, or do you like to just fill your resume with buzzwords, right? And that can become very clear to someone that's used to looking at resumes. So that's definitely something that I encourage students to work on. So one, try to get out of your own head. Assume that the other person reading your resume doesn't know what your class is or your course is or your life is or your projects are, and communicate it in a distinct way where you can make that known very quickly. And then be results driven. Show your accomplishments, not just fluffy buzzwords, because recruiters pick that up pretty quickly. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted me to hit on, Brittany, in terms of recruitment strategies or anything like that. I think you're on mute. I'm not able to hear you.
There we go. Sorry, my Zoom menu, like it disappeared. Okay, sorry. Not anything in particular, but students, if you have questions that you want to ask Arfa, this is a great opportunity to ask someone who is in the industry and has been in the industry for quite a while and has a lot of experience. So please feel free to type any of your questions in the chat, and we'll get to the questions in just a minute. We're going to wrap up and then we'll answer some questions.
And I will say, Brittany, something that I've seen a lot of the universities do now. So having a degree is, you know, something that you should pursue when it comes to, you know, the IT security, cybersecurity. It's such a rapidly changing landscape. It's good to have certs. And I know Nova does a lot to get students certified and have them, you know, graduate with those certifications under their belt. I wanted to share an experience where a guy looked really good on paper. He had gotten his Security Plus certification through Nova, came in for the interview. And as we started asking him questions about getting certified, he could barely answer one question. And so it became clear to us that he was able to, you know, cram, game the test, pass the test. But when it came to applicable knowledge, understanding those concepts, he couldn't really give us a solid answer. And for that reason, his candidacy, you know, at that time was no longer valid for us. But that's something that I want to remind students of too. If you put something on your resume, you have to be able to back it up, whether it's a certification or a skill or a project. Someone's going to ask you about it, and you have to be able to back it up. And that's something that you should also work on when you don't just write your resume, but practice talking about those projects as if someone were interviewing you. Grab a friend, a relative, or even, you know, Brittany, whenever your office opens back up, maybe they can drop by to see you and practice, you know, talking about those experiences so that somebody else, you know, can understand them if they get interviewed on it.
Yes, that is a really good point. I've I have also seen that with students, you know, talking to me about their resume and not being able to really go into depth at all about things that are on their resume, and that does not look good to recruiters or hiring managers. So make sure that if you're going to put it on there, you can speak about it, and if you can't speak about it, I would advise to leave it off.
Yeah, and one of the last transferable skills, which I would say is probably what I see as the most important, you know, our field can be very technical, but at the end of the day, don't ever forget how far communication skills can go. We had a guy that had submitted his resume through one of our employees. So it was an employer referral. He submitted his resume, had a great resume, had work experience, had been working at a data center, got his 4-year degree, had the certifications. And when I got on the phone with him, 1-word answers, 3-word answers. Okay, yes, no. And immediately the application was tossed at that point because he looked so good on paper and he had all the skills, all the work experience, all the certs, and solely for the communication skills, we never brought him in despite the fact that an employee highly referred him. So just that goes to show you how important communication skills can be in the workforce.
Mm-hmm. It's very important. And oftentimes what you see is because, like you said, IT is changing so fast, and that's going to continue to be a trend forever. And so employers are willing to invest in the technical training that is required to do a job, but they need candidates to bring kind of a baseline to the table in terms of these soft skills or these transferable skills, as they're sometimes called soft skills. So that's why it's important to have these things like communication and organization, because a lot of times if you are lacking in the technical skills, if you have something, you have a degree, you have something to show that you have just a little bit of knowledge, employers are willing, for the most part, to invest in folks and getting the training that they need to be successful on the job.
And I see a question came in about, does no work experience mean someone who never worked? What about someone who had worked a utility job for many years while they were studying? So for that, if it's okay, Brittany, I'd like to address that. We did hire an intern who had, just like this, been working, jobs at restaurants or different industries just to, make ends meet while they were in school. And that's totally okay. And I would encourage you to put that on your resume because it shows that you do have work experience. You were able to work for a manager or a boss. I know for the specific intern that's coming to mind, she had worked at a roofing company, and we really liked that because she worked in sales. And to me, anyone that has a background in sales is always really good in client experience because they're used to trying to make a sale, making a pitch, things like that. And it goes back to your theme, Brittany, of what are some transferable skills. It doesn't matter whether you're selling roofs to consumers or homeowners, or whether you're selling a data analytics Excel spreadsheet / consulting service to a client. Can you make the pitch, right? She made the pitch at a roofing company so she could work at a consulting firm, right? And she's getting the degree to do it. So she'll, like you said, Brittany, we can invest in the technical skills, and any job experience that you have, you should definitely share.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what this is all about. It's about pulling on experience that you have, whether it is in the field that you're interested in going into or not, and being able to show that, like, I've learned something along my career path, along my journey. Let me wrap up, and I see some questions, and I'm gonna answer them after I wrap this up. Okay, so just some kind of takeaways and things to remember. You have experience, and I want you, that's probably the main thing that I want you to get out of this, is that all experience is some form of experience, and you have gained some experience somewhere along the way. Focus on things that can be transferred from one job to another, and think about how you want to communicate those skills on a resume or in an interview. Always have a plan. Because I think you'll be the most successful when you have a plan. You can use a formula as a part of that plan to help you get your point across. So you can use a STAR method, you can use experience plus skills plus accomplishments, whatever formula you want to use, just have some sort of plan or formula to help you along the way. And so that's really all the information that I had to share. And if you have a question at this time for me or Arfa or whoever, feel free to type it in the chat, and we'll go ahead and start answering some of those questions.
Do you mind if I take this next question too, Brittany? Because it's regarding a heavy accent and how that affects the interview. So one thing that I will say about this is that people have their assumptions about accents, and that sucks. And I've seen and experienced that in the workplace. And I've seen, a lot of people operate with implicit biases. I remember I met the founder of a company once, and he said that he doesn't like to hire a specific demographic because they have too many responsibilities. And so you have to know going into a workplace that there are going to be implicit biases at play, and that's just something that you're going to have to work around, whether it's an accent or whatever assumption people have about genders, race, religion. Those things are real, and unfortunately that's just the situation. But I will tell you that we have a person on the team that I hired from Nova who had a very thick accent, and it was never something that held them back. And she'll come into, she's probably one of the top cloud security people at NASA today, was recruited directly out of Nova, had a thick accent, and it never stopped her. So whatever you think is an impediment, you have to just own it. And you have to, I can tell you what she does is she'll just tell people up front and say, hey, I grew up in XYZ country. I have a thick accent, just FYI, if you need me to repeat something, let me know. And she just owns it. And that's part of the confidence of just having work experience and doing it enough. You just have to own who you are, and you can't let that hold you back. So I will say that practice having certain conversations, practice having some sort of, tagline. I never dealt with an accent issue. I when I worked in a different industry where I traveled a lot and we took a lot of our members out a ton, there was always the assumption of like, every time you take clients out, everybody goes drinking and they go heavy on drinking, and that's part of client work. And I did not drink. And so that was something that I would just tell people up front. I'll be like, hey, I'm a teetotaler. Hey, you know, like, just you can say something lighthearted that sort of breaks the ice, and then you sort of set a stage and people can just move on from that. So that's what I'll say about that. Tips on finding internships. That's probably a good question for you, Brittany.
Yeah, so right now it might be a little bit challenging to find internships because everything is essentially virtual. And if companies haven't made the switch to virtual yet, they're still trying. So right now internships might be a little bit challenging, but what I will say is that for jobs or internships, networking is a big part of this. And I know right now you can't really network face to face, but use your online social platforms like LinkedIn to find folks who are in jobs that interest you or who work at companies that you might be interested in, and reach out to them. Have a goal in mind of why you're reaching out to them. Don't just reach out to them and then expect them to do all the work. Know what you're reaching out to them for and what you want to get out of the interaction. Maybe ask to set up a Zoom call with them to learn about what they do. And then from that, you can start building relationship and finding out, are there opportunities for interns to get involved at the company that you're interested in. I would also say check internships.com. It's a site specifically for looking for internships. You can also check Career Connection. That is a NOVA only resource. It's available for every NOVA student, for NOVA alum, faculty, and staff. And lots of employers post jobs and internships in Career Connection, and only NOVA students can see them. So you kind of have a leg up in that way. But yeah, networking through your social platforms and using your online job boards like Career Connections, and also your professors. A lot of professors who are in the IET division, especially the adjunct professors, they work in the industry at these companies. So speak to them about what opportunities might be available at the companies that they work at, because they're probably your best networking option because you already know them. You don't have to do any other work of trying to like get to know someone. So yeah, those are a few tips. It says, if a job qualification needs a security clearance and the candidates don't have it or not qualified. So are you asking what should they do if the job needs a security clearance? Clarify your question and then we'll come back to that because I'm not sure what they're asking. A student that I'm working with has an IT degree that is over 10 years old. She works with parts of her degree every day and was told that in order for her to further her IT degree, she would basically have to start over again, which right now is not possible. Could she get a job based on experience and certifications once she starts / completes her certification? She is taking classes just for information right now. Let me reread this.
I will tell you on this question that came in from Nadia, my experience working in the federal government has been that a lot of people had gotten their undergraduate degree in something like history, and now they're doing vulnerability and cybersecurity management for NASA. So that shouldn't hold you back. I got my degree in marketing. I'm a cybersecurity professional now. That stuff shouldn't hold you back. Like I said, rapidly changing landscape. If you're willing to do the work now to learn what you need to know today, that should be good enough. When it comes to clearances, again, because I work with this, so secret is sort of the lowest level clearance. Employers tend to be pretty clear about whether you have it or you should be able to get it. So there shouldn't be anything in your background that would impede you from getting it. Usually the clearance levels that are higher from that, so you're looking at, TS, poli-sci, you're looking at top secret type of clearances. Those roles you would need to read the job posting and make sure it's not something that's already required, because I've seen employers be very clear about whether you have to come into the role with it or already have it. Those are distinctions that do make a difference. So just read the posting clearly, or I would say talk to the hiring manager and see what they say.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes, so I want to make sure everybody that has a question has an opportunity to ask. Many cyber jobs require citizenships. What tips can you give to someone who is a green card holder to get a cyber job? This might be for you, Arfa, since you.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Brittany, this one breaks my heart. I remember interviewing this girl who was just a stellar candidate. She did not have her citizenship, and we could not hire her for that reason. Again, a lot of these job postings will say US citizenship is required. All of the postings that I put out, even for unpaid internships, US citizenship is required. What I can say for those roles is do whatever you can to get the certification. So the day you do get your citizenship, you're ready to go. Make sure you get internship experience somewhere else where maybe the citizenship is not a requirement, but try to do, work on those transferable skills where you can maybe work for a company that might, be doing cloud work, but not for the government, right? Because if you're doing it for the government, you're going to need the citizenship. So.
Yeah, and that might also, I think you said it might require you to do some free work to get that experience. So it might be volunteer stuff that you have to do to get that experience. So like you said, when you do get that citizenship, you're good to go. Mm-hmm. Nadia said, so should I recommend that she start from scratch or just do the certs? I think this is a follow-up from.
Yeah, I would always go the certification route because like I said, I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience of the folks that I work with at NASA. A lot of them got their degrees in something completely unrelated. So do the certifications, keep applying, have skills that are transferable, good communication skills. That should always get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have time for a couple more if anybody has any additional questions.
And I can speak to my transition, Brittany, because I mean, when you were giving that example of Brian, who was a nurse going into, cloud computing, I was a marketing professional that ended up at NASA doing federal consulting in cybersecurity. So not something that that's very foreign to me. Again, going back to the concept of transferable skills, when I was doing a lot of digital marketing work, I did a lot of data analysis and analytics. And that's what got my foot in the door at NASA, which eventually led to, being in a cybersecurity position there. Again, having management skills, project management skills, getting a PMP certification, that helps make sure that I am gainfully employed all the time. And these are the types of skills that you build throughout your career to make sure that, you have the skills that the workforce requires. But again, it doesn't really matter where you came from or what you studied. Can you do the job? That depends on your personality and what you're willing to learn and do.
I graduated Cyber and Nova and certified for Security Plus. I'm a US citizen. I cannot get any interviews because of experience. So is there any tips? So again, I think everything that we've covered today in terms of communicating what you've learned in your classes or volunteer experience or whatever, internships, wherever you've gained your experiences, is going to help you get closer or land that interview. I think there are certain things that you can do because a lot of these jobs, they have a phone screen before they ever have an interview. And so you have to get past that. And so maybe that's an area that you can look at to see, okay, what can I do differently in my phone screens? And that goes back to having a plan, knowing what you want to talk about before you ever get on the phone with an employer, because that's going to make the conversation flow a lot smoother. Using notes during your phone screen, they can't see you. So you can jot down notes of what you want to say, of the points that you want to make during a phone screen, but also making sure your resume is up to date and in tip-top shape using some of the tips that we covered today. Based on, and again, using those transferable skills. Learn and grow. The most I see that they may hire me. Teaching others. My goal is to get a job to learn and grow, but most I see that they may hire me. I only staying at the same level and I'm teaching others. How do I make it happen?
So I think that's more about growth strategy. So not staying in the same role, but moving up the corporate ladder. And my recommendation for that is to look at the roles that you want to apply for and start adding those skills into your resume. So let's say that you're just working on a project and sort of working in a silo, but you want to eventually become a manager and manage a team and, do things like that. So then you've got to start saying that, okay, you didn't have your own team, but you directed some of the third-party vendors that you guys work with, or you manage XYZ budget. Like, you have to start thinking of the roles that you want to be in and making sure that you're building that experience as well.
Mm-hmm. And some ways to build that experience is to look, if you are currently in a position, how can you implement some of these things in what you're already doing? Finding ways to make your job kind of work for you. So for example, I really enjoy writing. And writing is not, I write emails, but in terms of like writing blog posts or writing stories about people, that's not a part of my job. But I knew that like in my where I'm going next, I want that to be a part of whatever I want to do. So I started a blog. So finding ways to incorporate what it is that you're interested in or wherever you're headed, incorporate that into what you're currently doing.